Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Swati Taneja, and as a Training Production Director with Informa, I'm delighted to welcome you all to an informative webinar on performing break-even analysis in Excel. This webinar will be led today by our own speaker, Danielle Stein Fairhurst. She is the principal of Plum Solutions, a Sydney-based consultancy specializing in Excel modeling and analysis. Before we proceed with the webinar, I'd like to give you some details on the housekeeping for the next 45 minutes. The slides that you'll be seeing will be available on a SlideShare page, and the link will be emailed to you. The recording of the webinar will be available to download, and the link will be emailed in a day or two. Please take the time to complete the post-webinar survey that will pop up at the end of the webinar. You can type your questions throughout the session, and time will be allocated in the end for the speaker to address your questions. And now I'll hand over to your speaker for today, Danielle, who will be talking about performing break-even analysis in Excel.
Thank you very much, Swati. I'm very excited to be here. Just a little bit about myself. I'm based in Sydney in Australia. I am very happy to come over here a couple of times a year to Dubai. I really enjoy coming here, and I'm very happy to be back here again. It's quite nice to escape the heat in Sydney. It's been very hot in Australia, and coming over here I found a very unusual situation where it's been very rainy, and we even had a thunderstorm this morning, which was quite exciting. I've never seen one of those in Dubai before, so it's fantastic to be here. I'm running our financial modeling using Excel course, which is 5 days here in one of the hotels in Dubai, which I run a couple of times a year for Informa, which it's always quite a popular course. And when Swati has asked me to do a webinar, I thought I would cover a topic of break-even analysis in Excel. So break-even analysis is really a subset, I suppose, of financial modeling. It's one of the something that we often need to do as, you know, if you're working in finance, it's something that we often need to do is to calculate what would the break-even point be. We really often would use that, do that using Excel. The reason that we would do it is, for example, if you're doing a new product launch. So if you're trying to decide, you know, how many of our units do we need to produce such that we can make a profit, how many do we need to sell, you know, how many do we need to produce, and it can help you. Also, if you're thinking about getting rid of a product as well, it's quite useful for decision analysis performing the break-even. So you can see in the chart here that it's the point at which it becomes profitable, so the number of units at which our profitability is viable, really. Okay. How it kind of fits with Excel and with financial modeling, I mean, we pretty much always do break-even using Excel. When we do break-even, it needs to be dynamic, it needs to be flexible, and we need to be able to update it very quickly and easily. We often do it using scenarios, and really the whole point of financial modeling is having inputs and outputs. So, you know, if you change the inputs, the outputs change. And I mean, really, that's the whole point of financial modeling. So quite often a financial model in Excel will contain some kind of break-even analysis. It could be the purpose of the financial model, or it could just be a small part of the financial model that we've created. Quite often we'll be doing scenarios as part of a financial model, and often with break-even that can change quite a bit. So as our inputs change, you might find that your break-even point will change as well. So being able to do that quickly and easily is really the whole point of doing it in Excel. What I'd like to talk to you about today, and really the whole purpose of this webinar, is to show you how to do that in Excel. So I imagine a lot of you guys use Excel already. You're probably already doing quite a bit of financial modeling, or you might be quite new to it and wanting to learn a little bit more about it. So there's really 3 different ways that I'd like to go over with you. I've got a couple of case studies to cover with you very briefly. The first method of break-even I'm going to cover with you is using a chart. That's really a visual method of calculating break-even. It's not very accurate, but it's just a way. Quite often, if you want to visually show what your break-even point is, you can do that using a chart. The second way is using a formula, and the formula we use is to look at the difference between the selling price and the variable cost, which will give us our contribution, and see how many times the fixed cost, how many times we need to sell those in order to cover the fixed cost. So that formula is the fixed cost divided by the selling price less the variable cost. So we can do that using a very simple Excel formula. And the last method is using a goal seek. So that's just a little tool in Excel, so I'll show you how to use that as well. We're going to do a case study, just a very short one. Let's say, for example, you've got a brilliant business idea, you're an entrepreneur, and you think that making these swanky, fancy bird cages would be a great business idea. So you've done a little bit of analysis and you've got your costings right. So we know that in order to calculate break-even, we need to know a couple of different things. So we need to know the fixed cost, we need the variable cost, the selling price, and the volume. Now you can see on the slide that I've coloured the volume in a very strange looking format. It's actually using an input variable. One of the, if you're familiar with using Excel, it's one of the styles that's readily available on the Home tab. And when we flick over to Excel in a minute, I'll show you what that looks like. And one of the principles of best practice in financial modelling is to always, format our input in such a way that we can see it's an input. Now, with our break-even, the volume is a variable input. The volume, or the number of units that we need to produce, is the input that we don't know what that's going to be. So that's why I formatted it like that. So anything that's a variable, we format that as an input. So as part of my book, which is Using Excel for Business Analysis, there's a section on break-even, and you'll find that, if you've got a copy of the book, you'll find that on page 227. So let's just go over into Excel now, and we'll make this file available to you later on if you would like to play around with this. And even if you go onto the supplementary content of the book that I just talked about, some of these files or very similar files are available as well. So you can easily download them, or we'll make those available to you also. So let's firstly do the chart with break-even. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to show what our fixed costs would look like on a chart. So let's say, for example, we know that our fixed costs is about $250,000. We've got some variable costs, raw material, labor, overhead. So our total variable cost per unit we know is going to be $40. The selling price is $100. We think we can get $125 per cage from this. So let's have a look at what we think our break-even is going to look like. So let's put in our break-even. So I'm just going to link that through there. I'm going to use my F4 shortcut. So I'll just copy that in like that. and I'll copy that across. So I'll just show that as our break even, or as our fixed cost. Now, if we sell no cages, we're still going to have a fixed cost of $250,000. If we sell 1,000 cages, we've got a fixed cost of $250,000. If we sell 2,000 cages, so it really doesn't matter how many cages we sell, we're still going to have exactly the same fixed cost. So I'm going to show that on a chart. So to chart this, I'm just going to go to Insert and just go in and show a very, very simple line chart. Now, line charts have got a mind of their own, so quite often when we create a line chart, it doesn't give us what we want. And you can see here I wanted to have the number of cages across the bottom, and what it's given me is a separate line. So what I need to do is to just go in here and get rid of that. That does often happen. Now I've got 1, 2, 3. I don't want that. I want to have my number of cages across the bottom. So I'm going to just right-hand click on here and go into Select Data, edit my horizontal axis. They don't call it the x-axis anymore. They've dumbed it down for us and calling it the horizontal axis. Thank you, Excel. And I'm going to show that as the number of units across the bottom, like that. So that shows us that if we sell 0, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000, the fixed cost is going to be absolutely the same. So I'm just going to change my title here and call this Break Even for Bird Cages. So I'm just going to change that there. There we go. So that shows us what our fixed costs are going to be. What I'm going to do now is add in the variable cost. And this is a little more interesting than the fixed cost. So the variable cost is 40. So I'm going to use my F4 shortcut again to put in my absolute referencing, because I don't want that reference to change. I'm going to multiply it by the number of cages sold up here, so I don't need to worry about any dollar signs or referencing for that, and just copy that across. Now, what I want to do now is to add that to my chart. I can again go into right-hand click, or I can be a little bit tricky and just copy that, click on the chart, and Control V, and that will just throw them both in like that. You know what? I don't like the way this is looking. I think the 0 should look here, which should be there. You know, I want to line these up, so I'm just going to go into my chart and change the options, because I feel like this should be there, and I don't really like this gap. So what I'm going to do here is just right-hand click on my axis, go into Format Axis here. And here where it says axis position, I'm just going to go to on tick marks. There we go. That looks a lot better. Okay, great. I'm happy with that. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is add in my, calculate the total cost. So add that like that. So that gives us our total cost for our break-even analysis. Okay. Our revenue, we can calculate that by the number of cages sold and multiply that by the selling price. So F4 with that one there, so I want to fix my absolute referencing and then just copy that across like that. And so our profit is going to be the total, the revenue, less the total cost, like that. So we can see we're making a lovely profit there of